Welcome everybody to our final panel of the day, our closing UnPanel. Where do we go from here, which is essentially a question that we have asked at many AutoSens and in-cabin events in the past. As you can see, I'm not Sarah Sargent, although Sarah Sargent is one of my best friends. Sarah and I have been working together during this in-cabin and AutoSens event. I am filling in for her at the last second here. My name is Carl Anthony. I'm the host of the AutoSens and the In-Cabin Insights series, which are available on the AutoSens and In-Cabin YouTube channels. So I just want to take a second to just do a brief introduction here of our panelists. So we have Shaheen Amanullah, we have Pierrick Boulay, and we have Artmann here. And I just want to take a second here. Shaheen, if you could just, and Pierrick and Uver, if you could do just a quick introduction of yourselves and just let us kind of know who you are and your background, and then we'll get into the questions here. Shaheen, please.
Yeah, hi. So my name is Shaheen Amanullah, and I'm from Onsemi. I'm the director for camera systems integration, and my passion is image quality. And I have worked with OA for a very, very long time. I'm also the chair for P2020.
Thank you. Yeah, Pierrick.
I will continue. So I'm Pierrick Boulay. I'm principal analyst at Yole Group. I've been there since more than 10 years now and working on the automotive semiconductors, mostly for ADAS and in-cabin applications.
Yeah, so my name is Artmann. I'm CTO of Image Engineering, and I share the passion for image quality with Shaheen, so I do that for many, many years. And also, I'm a long-term participant and contributor to the AutoSens as we connect everything. That's in my daily role. I connect people talking to each other and connect lens guys with sensor and so on, and that's a great experience that we can see that here as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Uver. So our first question for our panelists, and Shaheen, we'll start with you and just kind of move in order here. But the first question for our panelists is around the idea of the best way to connect different specialists. We're all specialists here in our own way. We all have our own technical technical areas of expertise. But what is the best way to connect different specialists when it comes to things like that are in development? So algorithms, hardware, software, hardware. What is the best way to connect all of the different specialists who are involved in this landscape?
Well, that's a very challenging question, but that is very relevant as well. Because, I came here for the talk, and I think OA shares the same sentiment, is that, algorithm people who are developing perception stacks, they talk a very different language compared to actually people working on image quality side, or even the designers for the chip for that matter. That's not a problem that you're seeing only at this conference. Even within a company, you could have people having different views of it. So bringing together people should not be only at a conference level or a consortium. I think that also is driven at a company level. And I think common goals that you're trying to attain is going to be the driving force. We have regulations that are being, put out there, and what I feel is that each component and each, the perception stack or even the sensor vendor, we're all trying to find a solution for the problem in our own ways. But what we probably need is coming together to find a system level solution. Gone is a time where you would think about sensors making a difference. It's only the sensor, but probably the sensor is limited to some, at some level at which the optics takes over, or then the ISP can handle that. So I think there is a need for all of us to come together, and it's at multiple levels, at the company level, at a conference level.
Thank you, Shaheen. And Pierrick, same question to you. So how do we connect all the different specialists that we have here, working on all these different disciplines that you see across the exhibition floor? How do we connect everybody, all these different specialties?
So, as mentioned, Shaheen, so for sure the conference is a good opportunity to connect the different specialists, because when we look at the companies, even it's ADAS or Tier 1, the teams do not work together. I mean, for ADAS, for example, you have the ADAS team, you have the viewing team. They work on their own projects, but they do not talk to each other. So I think we have to create also teams that are mixing the different specialties at the OEM or Tier 1 levels to make some connection, exchange their knowledge, and find the best solution.
Right. Uver, what's your perspective?
Well, at university, my professor had a nice saying that if you have a hammer, all problems are nails.
Yeah,
so,
right.
and that is sometimes what appears here. So I think we all need to be humble and understand what we don't understand. So that there is experience, that there is knowledge from other teams that can actually help. So I've seen that many times that, computer vision people start very hard on solving a problem where it could be a very quick and easy fix by optics or by illumination or things like that. So I think we need, and that's on organizational level, in companies, in work groups of standards, but also here at conferences, we all need to understand that we do very complex things, so there's no expert for everything, but we need to be humble and understand that there is experts for everything, and we just need to make sure that everyone is heard and not just driven by someone with their own background. You should not push for the answer, you should maybe listen to all and then make an educated decision.
Well said, friend. Thank you. This AutoSens at In-Cabin event, we've heard more instances of AI or artificial intelligence. It's everywhere these days. If you pull up your LinkedIn or if you're reading an article, we hear about AI all the time, and many of us are using AI each and every day. Just as a simple example, I use Google Gemini when I'm cooking. Does this head of broccoli look bad? Is this still good, right? So we use AI for all kinds of things, but as far as what we're doing here at AutoSens and In-Cabin, where is the most untapped potential right now for AI? Where's the most untapped potential?
Well, I think that, this conference was heavy about how we have AI, driven vehicles, gone are the days for software-defined vehicles. But everybody's talking about the data accuracy, the amount of data that you need in order to train. But I guess the untapped potential is in how can you optimize the training further so that you can speed it up, right? Because today we know that if you have a perception stack that is trained based on a particular module, every component is very important. If you change any one component, then you have to retrain. But the question is, how fast can you retrain? Because you have to adapt to probably new situations that are coming. There's new training data sets that you have to start bringing in. So to me, the untapped potential is in how fast are you going to be able to train. So how do you optimize an AI to do better?
Right. Pierrick, what's your perspective on this? Where's the untapped potential for AI?
I think it's also linked to the data collecting. So most of the OEMs, Tier 1, they are collecting data on the field. That's taking time, a lot of money, and I think AI could be also used to generate corner cases that are difficult to collect. I know that some of them are already doing it, but we could use AI more to generate these corner cases that are crucial to generate, let's say, accurate system.
So I just had the pleasure to share a session where we were talking a lot about simulation, and there was RF Pro was saying they proudly know AI used here because it is a physical-based simulation and not generative AI, so that we can make sure that it's understood, and I think that's right. But on the other side, also AI is I mean, that's where it's tremendously great to have AI is to dig through a huge amount of data and find underlying truths or underlying things that interact with each other. And if the automotive industry with sensors is good as generating data, I mean, we have petabytes of data very quickly generated, but then to process that, to understand it, I think that's where we can use a lot of help to understand that, because that is just too much for a lot of things to digest.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to, so we hear the phrase AI, artificial intelligence all the time. That's something that we see pretty much, again, every time we pull up our LinkedIn pages. Another phrase that we hear quite frequently or see quite frequently is something called China speed. And whenever I hear China speed, my late father was an economics professor, and he used to talk a lot about the Toyota way, the way that the Japanese did business was different than the way American companies did business. So China speed is something I know that my late father, if he were here, would, as an economics professor, he would certainly enjoy that concept. But China speed is a term that we see. So for our panelists, what is China speed exactly? And is it a question of will China slow down, or do OEMs in the West, i.e. in Southeast Michigan, do they need to become more responsive and faster? What does that look like?
Well, I think that it's true. China is developing so fast technologies. I think yesterday we heard a talk that it's 18 months is the development time. I think for other OEMs probably it's 4 years. That's the comparison that we have. And somebody else was asked on the panel yesterday a similar question. And I think the feedback that was given was, do you need a vehicle that is not completed and just deployed? Or do you want a completed vehicle that's also safe? Well, that's true, but it doesn't change the fact that you can probably optimize further. Probably not 4 years, but probably they can be 2.5 years, right? What needs to change for us to adapt? So it's not going away. China is going to go as fast as they can, right? But I think they'll also have to find a middle ground where they say, okay, now if I need to have safer vehicles, what am I going to do? So maybe their 18 years could lengthen and ours could shorten a little bit more. So I think there's a middle ground there.
Yeah. Pierrick, what's your perspective?
I think China is not going to slow down. I think they will continue to go as fast as they do. Even the car is not perfect. They will do better for the next generation, and the next generation after it will do again better. So they are learning from what they are doing, and they are continuously improving. European OEMs, they used to be slow. We spoke about 4 years for the program, but some European OEMs, they are improving, and now some cars are developed during 2 years. So that's a strong improvement, and they are following the China's influence.
Yeah, I think we should not trying to look at that something they are doing is not right, because we should learn from that. I mean, I'm that long in the industry. I saw the rise of mobile phone photography, and I also know how the traditional photography companies looked at mobile phone photography in the first years and saying, oh no, that is more like toys. We know how to do it. That's toy. I mean, look where we are now. I mean, there's billions and trillions of images taking on mobile phones, and a significant lower number on traditional photography. Doesn't mean digital cameras from traditional companies is bad. It's just a reality we have to accept. So that's why I think we should not be say, hey, what China is doing is too quick to be good, but we should really try to learn from that. What do they do differently? How can we learn from that? Because yeah, that's what we try to adopt. And yes, I think. We might need to meet somewhere in the middle. It will slow down in China because they will have to legacy things that they have to take care, so the whole thing will go slower. But I think also the West, if we put that as one group, yeah, we also have to learn from that, and we should learn from that and not just look down to it.
So I consider it more like a driving force. Like everything, in every era, there's been a driving force, right? And you think differently because of that. I guess this should be considered something like that. Yeah.
Uwe, what you were saying, and then just collectively, you as panelists, reminded me of something. So I grew up in northwest Iowa, in a town that is famous for making ice cream. The most ice cream in the world is produced in my hometown in Iowa. But so between ice cream plants and soybean fields, there's only 3 vehicles that exist. That's a Dodge truck, a Chevy truck, and a Ford truck, and maybe some minivans. But the point of all that was in the late 1980s and the early 1990s, when trucks and minivans were ubiquitous, suddenly Honda Accords started showing up in my neighborhood, you know. And you're like, what's Honda? I thought they made motorcycles, you know, or something like you saw a poster of, you at the book fair, you would get a book, like a motorcycle book, be like, oh, there's a Honda motorcycle. I didn't know they made cars. This is us as kids, right? We'd only ever seen trucks, you know, but it still stands that those automakers, the Japanese, Honda, Toyota, had an affordable vehicle. It wasn't really practical to take your truck on a long-distance trip down to the big city of Omaha, Nebraska. You needed a more comfortable, reliable car, and that was the Honda Accords of the world. So in some ways, I look at the Chinese automakers and through a similar lens of where I was growing up, where they came because they were affordable or they offered something that wasn't currently in the market, you know. So again, not maybe the same thing, but that I do recall that story of seeing a Honda Accord in our neighborhood. And there was no Google, so you're like, what's this? You know, there was no Gemini to take a picture of it. So anyway, I digress. But as we move forward, so the need for perception algorithms. So a question to our panelists: do we need to train perception algorithms on human vision, or do we need a non-biological reference observer? So I'll say that question again. So do we need to train perception algorithms on human vision, or should we use a non-biological reference observer?
Well, we had a whole-on talk yesterday about human-centric road infrastructure, and we talked about AI. I completely believe that when you talk about perception stacks, we definitely need to think about the non-biological user, because the way that we react to things are very different. The whole reason why we have AI coming in and you have AI-defined vehicles is the response time of a machine is much faster than how we would do things, right? And so the way that we observe things are going to be different. Our human eye cannot perceive, low contrast details. But earlier on in a presentation this morning, I think David from Magna talked about how there could be a lot of noise in the image. As a human, I wouldn't even have noticed the parrot behind the noise, but going through diffusion, you could actually extract the model out of it. So it is necessitating that we start training these things based on a non-biological user, just because we might be imposing a lot more stringent conditions on each sensor modality if we don't understand what the capability of the perception stack is, had it been given the right data and the right training.
So by this question, it's interesting because there are some OEMs that are relying only on cameras for their applications. It's mostly level 2 application or level 2 plus, and as long as a driver is responsible, seems to be okay. But when we go to higher levels of automation, then we need to add diversity of the sensors, and same for the training. So I do feel that non-biological training is necessary to reach higher level or more performance, let's say, systems for the automation.
Uwe, yeah, your perspective.
Yeah, I agree with Shaheen. I think we need that, but what we first of all need very urgently as well is a common understanding what actually is human vision based. So I see that in a lot of presentation when I talk to people. So they do something for machine vision, but then use delta E as a measurement for color, or use luminance, which is a photometric unit that is scaled to our human vision system, as for machine vision task. So I think we need the understanding what metrics we use, where do they originate from? And we still have that a lot of measurements that we do, a lot of metrics we use originate from photography and digital imaging and are transferred later to machine vision, and there are still sometimes components in there. On the other side also, because right now I've got the feeling that people say, okay, it's either complete human vision or it's complete raw, and I think there is a common ground in between. So let's take color. I think there is more than just raw data or a color correction matrix that puts it into a shared color space. I think there can be a shared common ground color space. So I mean, if I would design that, if I have 5 different sensors, I just make sure that they are all on the same, and then I can train my model with that. And it doesn't have to be a human vision scaled color space. It just needs to be the common ground that I have for all my sensors. I think that would help, but that is a common understanding of what is human vision, what is machine vision, and that is needed, I think.
Can I just add on that?
Yeah.
So I also feel that not only do you need that, but I think there needs to be a bridge between not just understanding what human vision is and what is machine vision, but also understand what kind of metrics can you use there, right? Because today when we talk about, like, I think Rob gave a presentation and he talked about using the Macbeth color checker to look at, how these metrics vary. And then he looked at the traffic light to see, okay, how does that work? So he talked about reflective versus transmissive targets, but you could have entirely different objects that you're looking at in machine vision where you need to have a different metric for pass fail criteria. You talk about color, you talk about the orange and the yellow separation. Well, does the image sensor need to give colors that look perfect like the traffic light, or does it need to have enough separation in the color ratios that it can differentiate, right? So for a human observer, it might not accurately match what is coming out, but yet you will be able to tell there's a difference between, say, the red and the orange. It doesn't have to be deep red or deep, orange. And machine vision would have a good ratio to separate between the two. So just like you said, it could be either a common language or it could be a common space at which we do the training. Yeah.
Thank you, Shaheen. Yet this year, in November 24th through the 26th, AutoSense and in-cabin will return to China to Hefei. And part of the reason why we chose Hefei is because of the robust semiconductor ecosystem that is in that area. So with that in mind, the semiconductor ecosystem in China, how does that impact the rest of the world, essentially? Does that drive technology elsewhere, like in Europe or even here in North America? So what does that semiconductor ecosystem look like in China? And does that impact other regions around the globe?
Well, I think it does, right? Because they have a very robust ecosystem and a very cost-effective ecosystem. So even if you were to replicate a similar ecosystem, I think we had COVID-19 hit us, and we realized that depending only on one country or one place for everything could be impactful, right? So everybody is thinking about how can they create their own ecosystem in their region. But the question is, are you going to be cost-effective? That is the first question we need to ask, right? Talking about North America, we are bringing in manufacturing again back to North America, but are we going to be cost effective, right? Or are people going to pay for what they're going to get out of here? What is the differentiator that you're going to have? So I think it's both about bringing an ecosystem across the world, but also trying to be cost effective, and what's the differentiator that you can give compared to what China is doing right now.
Pierrick, what's your thoughts on this?
So the Chinese ecosystem in terms of semiconductor is really dense. The Chinese government, they made some recommendation, so not regulation, but recommendation to the OEMs, saying that last year they have to use, or they would recommend them to use 25% of semiconductors from local suppliers. And then from this year, it is moving to 100% of semiconductors. So it's recommendation. It will not be applicable to all cars produced in China, but it's starting. And what you were saying, that they can produce all the semiconductors they have in Beijing, not this year, but last year. They made some DC-DC converter that were only using Chinese semiconductors. So they already have the power for analog devices, for image sensor, for any other type of devices, even for memory. They start to be automotive grade. And when we look at the SoC providers, they are now at the same level as NVIDIA. They are all replacing NVIDIA. The OEMs, they are developing their own semiconductors or their own SoC. That's a very strong push, and they are even moving to Europe. DSI, SV, they are designing domain controllers. They open an office in Munich. Same for Horizon Robotics. They have a partnership with Volkswagen. They open an office in Europe. So they are not yet in other countries than China, but they are progressing very fast. And I would not be surprised that OEMs in Japan or in Europe, they will soon be using Chinese systems.
Uwe, what's your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, in China, it's extremely competitive. We just learned here as well on stage that there is right now like 109 OEMs in China, and they push themselves to all new heights and push them forward. And that's something that we just have to accept and have to see. I think China did. They have a controlled economy, so there was a clear decision, okay, we want to go into that market, and then, okay, where are we good at, where is the chance, and that's electronics and batteries. And then they just pushed for that, and well, I mean, the traditional, I'm from Germany, so the traditional things like metal sheet and working and chassis and so on, that's not where they specialize in electronics, because there's money to earn, there's things, and that's, we just have to accept, and I think they are extremely smart, there's a lot of engineers there. So I think I agree. We will see that it's not we exporting to China, but importing from China, because it's cost effective, it's good, and that's something that we have to accept.
So, but do you think that it's going to be like them exporting to different places, or them setting up within other continents, right? Like they have their own supply chain in China, then they would develop a similar ecosystem in another continent and supply for that continent. How do you see it? Sorry, I'm asking questions on your behalf.
You're doing a way better job than I did, so go for it.
I think today we see a lot of in China for China, so develop car in China with Chinese, let's say, suppliers. I think for the Chinese OEM, they will do the same in Europe. They will build car in Europe for Europe using probably European supplier, but also the Chinese one, but with European offices, with local players or local suppliers. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not that the business expert, but what I see is that they are growing very fast, and they might outgrow their own market. So when they do right now, like in China for China, it might be that it can happen that the for China is not big enough anymore, as we have so many people producing. So that's where they will aggressively go also into other market. I mean, we see OEMs pushing into Europe, into US, and that's not only because it's easy, it's an easy goal, but it's just running out of customers in China, so we have to go somewhere else, right?
Yeah, the Chinese market is. Somehow saturating or declining at the moment, so that's why the OEM, they are exporting over the world. So in Europe, when we compare 2025 to 2024, I think it's a 40% growth from the Chinese OEMs in terms of sales, and same for South America. It's a big growth for the Chinese OEMs.
We have just about 5 minutes left, so we'll take some questions here in just a moment. So if you do have questions, we'll take those in just a second. I'll close with our panelists here with just a quick sort of question here. Any just final key insights from the three of you, just key takeaways that you've either observed just here at the conference over the last couple days or just your work and career in general? Key insights, key takeaways from your perspective that we can walk away with today. What would you like to share with us?
So for me, it was about the importance of simulation. I know that simulation was brought up last year as well, but I think it's heavily leaned on today. And they're talking about the accuracy, the data set. In some cases, they don't even have the data to simulate what is going on. So I think my key takeaway is, more about simulation, getting the right data set, and trading based on the right data set. And accuracy comes from there.
Thank you, Shaheen. Pierrick, what would you like to share?
I think we talk a lot about centralization and let's say having large controllers, but one thing is key is the networking to transfer data from sensors to controller or between controller to controller, and then you have plenty of protocols. You have GMSL, OpenGMSL, ASA, Ethernet. That will be a very big battle between all these protocols to be compliant with the different suppliers, to have open source or proprietary, and when, for example, with image sensors now integrating SerDes inside the image sensor, so you have to choose one protocol for the SerDes. So that's a very strong impact on the industry, I would say.
Uwe, what are your thoughts?
Well, something that always kind of blows my mind when I go here, because I mean, I'm in a small niche. I'm an image quality expert and do camera testing. But what I see, and each time I come to these conferences, I learn is how complex the whole sensor stack is, and how much expertise is in small parts of that, so that there's entire companies just doing connecting and doing the serializers or whatever component you have. And I think that it's always very interesting, and but I see also maybe it's naive, but how much work goes into all these different protocols, how to connect that, and how much resources go into that. So in my naive way, I would like to see that there should be much more interfaces that just work, so that everyone can concentrate on their own thing and the interface is clear. But maybe that's something for China speed or things like that. So to say, okay, we don't have to spend months and months to develop the board for that. It's just a given, and then we concentrate on data flow or things like that. But yeah.
Uwe, thank you, my friend. If there are any questions for our panelists, we will take them at this time. And if there are no questions, I'm going to be the cool teacher and dismiss us early.
So no question will come now. So
let's give our panelists a round of applause, please.
Thank you.